Incredible moment. Trucker discovers 3 Jaguars defending mother and child from a hidden threat. Jake Thompson pulled over on the side of the winding road, the truck's engine growling softly as he reached for a much-needed break. The day had worn long. Hours spent on the highway had left him fatigued and anxious. He stepped outside, stretched his legs, and breathed in the pine-scented air of the untouched wilderness surrounding him. What he stumbled upon next would challenge everything he believed about protecting his own. As he ventured deeper into the brush, his heart leapt when he spotted it. 3 majestic jaguars, their spirits fierce as they defended their cub from a lurking poacher. The sight took his breath away. A father himself, he felt a rush of recognition in their wild, desperate dance, one that reflected his struggle to protect his own 2 children back in Pinevale. If only he could harness that wildness to keep adversity at bay. The moment crackled with an electric urgency, and Jake's hands instinctively reached for his phone. He captured the scene, the fierce mother standing guard, the clumsy but determined cub, and the shadow of danger that loomed just beyond his vision. When he posted the video online, the reactions flooded in, and the tiny town of Pinevale erupted into heated conversations. Wildlife conservation versus economic gain, the argument spread like wildfire. But for Jake, this dilemma was personal. His late father's values echoed in his mind, reminding him of the land they had fought to keep. The Jaguars weren't just wildlife, they represented what it meant to stand firm for family, for heritage. He glanced at the notifications creeping onto his screen, chirping like the birds in the canopy. He should stay silent, protect his small paycheck that supported his family, right? Yet the burning question lingered. Can he afford to stay quiet? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Had he taken the right step or opened a Pandora's box? Will his kids understand if he fights for something that stands to threaten their well-being? The inner turmoil knotted inside him, each thought echoing louder than the last. Economic stability versus moral obligation. Who would pay for his courage? The weight of silence began to press down as the sun dipped lower in the sky. Then there it was, an ominous figure lurking in the distance, perhaps the very poacher he had filmed. Jake's breath hitched, muscles tense and ready. The Jaguars had a mission, and he felt the call of that mission wrap around his heart like a chain. The tension clawed at his stomach as he clutched his phone, the device that could pierce the veil of silence with a single click. But was he ready to expose himself to danger? He felt trapped between 2 instincts, fatherly protection for his kids and primal urgency to defend the family of Jaguars. He stood frozen, pulse racing, knowing his next move could very well unravel it all. As the shadow drifted closer, Jake faced the stark truth. To act could mean risking everything he cherished, but to do nothing felt like forsaking the legacy his father had fought so hard to protect. Jake's heart pounded against his ribcage, the looming figure sharpening in focus against the backlit forest. The familiar worry washed over him, one he felt in every decision faced at home, balancing love for his family against the weight of responsibility. But this was different. The stakes were visceral, urgent, exposing a part of him he had long buried, the part that craved to fight, to protect not just his own, but something wild, beautiful, and untamed. He glimpsed the Jaguars again, their kinetic grace juxtaposed with his own hesitation, catalyzing something deep within him. It was not just about the economic implications anymore. It was about standing against injustice. The image of their fierce love for one another stirred the echoes of his father's teachings. We must be the voice for those who cannot speak. A clarion call thrummed in his mind, louder than anything else. Jake's fingers tightened around his phone, his decision crystallizing like ice. He could shoot that video again, capturing the threat of the poacher, the ferocity of the mother protecting her cub, encapsulating a burgeoning need to channel wildness and passion into tangible action. He shivered at the thought of confrontation, yet it felt right, a righteous fire igniting his resolve. But his thoughts flickered back to his children. He could picture them, their innocent faces cherished in the warm glow of home. Would they understand the risks he was about to take? Would they resent him for endangering their future for a cause that seemed so distant from the familiar haunts of Pinevale? The internal conflict grew heavy again, a battleground of thought. He inhaled deeply, drawing the raw scent of pine and earth. It steadied his resolve. The figure still approached. The ground crunched beneath its feet, a sinister rhythm that felt increasingly hypnotic. Jake swallowed hard. He was done allowing fear to dictate his actions. He would not let the Jaguars face the poacher alone. They deserved a chance, just as his children did. In a swift motion, Jake raised his phone, framing the shadowy figure in the camera. He steadied his breath, the world narrowing down to the task at hand. "I'm coming for you," he whispered, an echo of defiance he didn't know he was capable of. As the viewfinder adjusted, the poacher stepped into sight. It wasn't just the threat of violence. It was the embodiment of all the corporate greed, the careless disregard for nature in pursuit of quick profits. The moment snapped into clarity. Jake pressed record and let the camera roll, capturing everything. The Jaguars' fierce stance contrasted sharply against the poacher's motive, an image that needed to be shared. Jake felt an unfamiliar adrenaline surge through him as the man noticed him. Expectation cracked like thunder in the charged atmosphere, weighty and suspenseful. The poacher stopped, confusion morphing into realization. And in that instant, Jake's heartbeat synchronized with nature's rhythm, a protective pulse that throbbed like a war drum. "Go," he shouted, now not just to the Jaguars but to himself, as he stepped forward, resolutely bridging the gap between predator and prey. The encounter was spiral-bound to escalate, and he was ready. The diverging paths of life loomed before him, those of cowardice or courage. Jake's stance solidified, and for the first time, he felt truly alive. The vision of standing against the threat consumed him, the legacy of fatherhood extending far beyond the confines of family. It included a fierce protectiveness for all that was vulnerable. In that charged moment, he realized it was more than a fight for the Jaguars. It was a fight for himself, for a burgeoning part of his identity that reclaimed spirit and bravery. But as the poacher began to approach, hands reaching for whatever weapon he carried, Jake knew his moment of truth had arrived. He braced himself for the impending confrontation, feeling the weight of every decision collide in the air, electrified with tension. What would the outcome be? Would Jake find the strength within him to confront this danger? Or would he learn that courage sometimes means confronting the vulnerability of one's own heart? As the poacher drew closer, Jake's instincts sharpened, urging him forward despite the danger. The Jaguars, alerted to his presence, became a bridge between two worlds, innocence and avarice, survival and greed. Jake felt their fierce protectiveness radiating from them, a testament to the bond they shared. In that moment, something shifted within him. He was no longer merely a father or a bystander, but a participant in a story far larger than himself. The poacher's face twisted in rage and disbelief. He raised a heavy club, its intent clear. The weight of his family's legacy pressed down on Jake, their quiet strength reverberating through his veins. This was not merely a confrontation. It was a challenge to reclaim his place in the world, to stand tall against the currents that sought to pull him under. He tightened his grip on the camera, signaling his intent to document this unfolding drama, not just for himself, but to hold the poacher accountable. "Back off!" "Jake!" shouted, his voice steady even as he felt the flicker of fear dance at the edges of his mind. This wasn't just about the Jaguars anymore. It was about claiming his narrative, one defined by resilience instead of retreat. The poacher hesitated, taken aback by the sudden show of defiance. Jake recognized the sliver of doubt in his eyes, and with it, an impulse surged through him. The best defense lay not just in standing his ground, but in shifting the dynamic. He raised the camera higher, angling it towards the lens of intimidation he was desperate to project. "Look at them," Jake said, voice slicing through the tension like a knife. The Jaguars remained poised, ready to pounce at a moment's notice, embodying grace and fury. "Your greed doesn't belong here. These creatures have a right to thrive, to live freely." Each word felt like an echo of his father's wisdom, a mantra steeped in purpose. Jake realized that by voicing his convictions, he was simultaneously reclaiming his identity. He was a protector, a witness, a force against the chaos of exploitation. The poacher snorted, anger flaring in his eyes. "You think you can stop me with a fancy video? This land means nothing to people like you. This is about survival." His tone dripped with derision, dismissing Jake's conviction as mere sentimentality. But the Jaguars, standing between them, seemed to bolster Jake's resolve. He watched the mother reassess her cub, a reflection of the very love he had for his children. That raw emotion ignited an unquenchable fire within him. No, this isn't about survival through destruction. It's about respecting life, preserving what's precious. With each declaration, Jake felt the invisible barriers he had carried begin to chisel away. He wasn't just defending the Jaguars, he was reclaiming agency over his own fears and doubts, confronting the core of his identity. The poacher snorted, anger flaring in his eyes. "You think you can stop me with a fancy video? This land means nothing to people like you. This is about survival." His tone dripped with derision, dismissing Jake's conviction as mere sentimentality. But the Jaguars, standing between them, seemed to bolster Jake's resolve. He watched the mother reassess her cub, a reflection of the very love he had for his children. That raw emotion ignited an unquenchable fire within him. No, this isn't about survival through destruction. It's about respecting life, preserving what's precious. With each declaration, Jake felt the invisible barriers he had carried begin to chisel away. He wasn't just defending the Jaguars, he was reclaiming agency over his own fears and doubts, confronting the core of his identity. Just as Jake steadied himself for what might come next, the poacher lunged, but Jake's instinct propelled him. He dodged left and felt a surge of adrenaline. The need to act crystallized into clarity. This wasn't simply about physically resisting an aggressor. It was about embodying a larger truth about the struggle between the vulnerable and the voracious. The moment hung in balance, breathing down his neck as Jake decided on his next move. He could run, back away, and return to the safety of ignorance. Or he could confront the specter of violence head-on, risking everything, his legacy, his family's comfort, his own safety, for the fight to protect the wild. In that pivotal second, Jake once again felt something welling within, a grit that had laid dormant but now burst forth in a blazing urgency. The confrontation reached a boiling point, and he knew he had to choose. Would he continue this fight to reclaim his voice, or would he retreat into the shadows of fear? Before he could rethink, adrenaline surged through him. "You need to see this," he yelled, shifting his camera, "because you can't just take what you want anymore." Jake took a step toward the poacher, the Jaguars at his side, and steeled himself for the pivotal moment that would determine not just each of their fates, but his own. The air crackled with energy, a confrontation loomed, and he was ready to face the unknown. Would the weight of his convictions be enough to challenge the poacher's greed, or would that same greed swaddle him whole? The tension in the air was palpable as Jake took a step forward, the Jaguars mirroring his stance, their powerful presence bolstering his determination. Time seemed to stretch, each second filled with the weight of possibility. The poacher's eyes flickered with a blend of disbelief and anger as he processed the unexpected defiance. This was no longer just an encounter, it was a confrontation of ideologies, of life and death. Jake felt a rush of clarity coursing through him. The Jaguars embodied everything he had struggled to articulate: strength, protection, and a fierce commitment to their young. "You don't understand the power you're challenging," he asserted, his voice steadying with each word. "You're not the only one fighting for survival. This land belongs to them, and it's my duty to defend it." The poacher sneered, lifting the club with frustration. But Jake's declaration made him think, even if just for a fleeting moment. The camera in Jake's hands was no ordinary tool. It was his voice against injustice, a vessel for truth. As he raised it higher, he saw the Jaguars in his peripheral vision, resolute and unyielding. Fueled by their presence, Jake took another breath, grounding himself in the reality of his mission. "What you're doing is a choice, and choices have consequences," Jake continued, his heartbeat pounding against the silence that enveloped them. "This isn't just about you. It's about understanding our connection to this land. It's about respect." The poacher's grip tightened, muscles coiling under the strain of his rage. He took a step forward, not just threatening to strike, but also inviting Jake to retreat. A wave of fear brushed against Jake's resolve, whispering doubts that threatened to upend him. But deep within, the fire ignited by the Jaguars refused to extinguish. He could not, would not back down. He remembered the stories his father used to tell of men who had fought for what was right, who faced adversity with unwavering courage. Channeling that legacy, Jake responded by positioning himself between the Jaguars and the poacher, an act of defiance that was as much for the wildlife as it was for himself. "Stand down. I won't let you harm them." The air crackled with tension, a standoff that released a primal energy. It was not just about physical confrontation, it was a battle of wills. Jake felt a rush of adrenaline, but beneath it lay a well of fear, a recognition that he was standing at the precipice of something monumental. He could feel the importance of this moment, the clarity of his decision shaping who he would become. Would he manage to turn this confrontation into something more profound, holding a mirror up to the poacher's choices? The Jaguars' watchful gazes provided a kind of solace, a reminder that his fight was not just for himself, but for them, for his children, for all who could not defend themselves. With the poacher poised to act, Jake made a split-second decision, shifting his focus back to the camera. "I won't just be a witness. I'll make sure everyone sees what you're willing to do," he declared, bringing the lens closer to capture the raw intensity of the moment. He recognized that this fight was just as much about narrative and legacy as it was about survival. The ground felt unstable beneath him, uncertainty swirling. But Jake was emboldened by the reality pressing closer. A new path was emerging. He wasn't simply a man facing a poacher. He was unearthing something deeper about himself, discovering a resolve he hadn't known he possessed. As he steadied himself, ready for the next move in this intense game of survival, he felt the Jaguars flank him, a united front against the looming threat. The poacher's anger radiated, but so did Jake's newfound determination, a tangible force clashing against the weighty presence of greed. In these moments, surrounded by everything he sought to protect, he felt his own growth accelerate, challenging not just the poacher's plans, but also a part of himself that had long been dormant. Then the poacher lunged, propelling the confrontation forward in an unexpected surge of action. The moment had arrived to confront not just the embodiment of threat in front of him, but the very essence of who he had become amidst this chaos, and who he would need to be as the fight escalated. Jake held firm, knowing this battle was just the beginning of a much larger journey. Would he emerge from this moment not only defending the Jaguars, but also finally defining himself in the process? As the adrenaline soared and uncertainty loomed ahead, the only way was forward, into the unknown. Jake's world narrowed to the split-second chaos of the moment. The poacher lunged with wild intent, and Jake's instincts blared a primal alarm. He sidestepped, avoiding a blow that could have shattered the fragile boundary separating them. With a quick adjustment, he raised the camera as if it were a shield, his heart pounding, not just from fear, but with a new sense of urgency. This was not just a physical battle, it was one of conviction. "Back off," Jake shouted, his voice surging with newfound authority. Each word was charged with the power of his resolve. The poacher hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty darting through his features, and Jake seized the moment, capturing the potential for transformation seeping into the air around them. If he could just connect this moment of scorn with the eyes of the world, perhaps he could shift the narrative. For a heartbeat, Jake's world expanded back to the Jaguars. Their eyes glowed with a fierce intelligence, as if they understood the stakes. He noticed one of the Jaguars peel away, lured by the commotion, moving cautiously yet purposefully into the underbrush. It was disorienting, the balance between confrontation and the idea of a bigger fight, the defense of their territory entwined with his unearthing of personal courage. The poacher, still panting from his failed attempt to dominate, glared at Jake, trying to reclaim the upper hand. "The world doesn't need a pretty picture," he spat, his voice laced with venom. "It needs people who know how to get things done." Jake gripped the camera, feeling its weight as a representation of his voice, a tool for change rather than just an instrument of documentation. "You think power is in violence?" he countered, his demeanor calm yet simmering with intensity. "True power lies in understanding, in respect. You're missing that entirely." A flicker of confusion crossed the poacher's face. The word struck a chord, raising doubts that could undermine his violent bravado. Jake knew he was tapping into something vital, a fundamental truth that could either ignite rage or provoke reflection. The Jaguar that had moved into the brush returned with a steady stride, its posture confident. Jake felt the urgency mount. This confrontation was about more than just survival. It was about awakening a collective consciousness. If he could shake the foundations of the poacher's beliefs, he might reach him in ways the club could not. "Look at them," Jake pointed, capturing the Jaguars as they increasingly surrounded him, inching further into the poacher's space. "They're not here to harm you. They're only protecting their young. How can you call yourself deserving of this land when you'll do anything to destroy its life?" Jake sensed a fracture forming in the poacher's confidence, a tremor in the fury that had fueled him thus far. It wasn't just the Jaguar's assertiveness, it was the growing realization that his own choices led to isolation, poison in the air instead of connection to the earth. But the poacher was not a coward. With a guttural yell, he lunged again, and this time Jake was ready. He swung his camera, momentarily deflecting the blow. The violent clash sent vibrations through his body, intensifying the chaos all around. In that split second, Jake chose to endure, choosing strength over fear. "Let me show you what strength really looks like," he said, the determination catalyzing within him,
a realization that his fears had anchored him down, but now they could fuel his flight. This moment was pivotal, not just for the Jaguars, but for him. With every challenge met head-on, he was crafting his own identity, deflecting aggression into purpose, redirecting fear into audacity.
The confrontation had crystallized into clarity. He would not only defend these creatures, but employ every resource he had to reshape the narrative. In a calculated move, he positioned himself between the poacher and the Jaguars, knowing that this act of courage pivoted the momentum. This was becoming a battle not just for survival, but one for his own firmament. Yet, even as the adrenaline surged, doubt crept back in like a shadow. What if he was wrong? What if confronting the poacher only ignited further violence? Just then, he caught a glimpse of the Jaguars, still poised and protective, and a surge of calm wrapped around him. No more running, he whispered to himself, knowing that this confrontation was not merely about animal rights, but a profound examination of what it meant to take a stand. As the poacher reeled from the failed attack, Jake found his gaze steady, apprehending a dual reality of chaos and resilience. The next moment held the potential for profound change or devastating loss. Would he emerge not just as a defender of the wild, but as the architect of his own destiny? With this fundamental truth echoing in the chambers of his mind, he resolved to push forward into the fray. In that adrenaline-soaked second, the ground shifted again beneath his feet. The poacher, back on the offensive, presented an imminent threat. But deep within Jake brewed a storm of courage that begged to be unleashed. The time had come to face not just the poacher, but the very fabric of his own evolving morality. Would this stand redefine him as a champion not only of Jaguars, but also of ideals worth fighting for? The poacher moved with animalistic ferocity, his muscles coiled and ready to spring. Jake's heart raced as he anticipated the next move. Fear tugged at him, but it was overshadowed by an exhilarating determination to stand his ground. This was not just a physical confrontation, it was a clash of ideologies, a chance to redefine everything he had come to believe about courage and advocacy. "You're fighting a losing battle," Jake shouted, forcing his voice to rise above the chaos. With each word, he aimed to pierce through the poacher's bravado, hoping to reach the sliver of humanity buried beneath layers of dangerous conviction. "You think strength is in violence? Strength is in the ability to protect and coexist." The Jaguars, sensing Jake's resolve, crept closer, their bodies tense yet poised. They were the embodiment of fierce guardianship, a sharp contrast to the desperation of the poacher. Jake's focus shifted, assessing the Jaguars as allies in his struggle. Their presence tethered him to purpose. These majestic creatures were fighting to safeguard their territory, just as he was now fighting for his own identity. Jake suddenly realized that capturing this critical moment could extend beyond the camera lens. This was about storytelling in its most primal form, one of survival, identity, and the raw instinct to defend what is right. He didn't just want an image, he yearned for a narrative that could sway hearts and minds. His earlier doubts evaporated, replaced by a burgeoning self-belief and the understanding that he was authoring his own story. As the poacher lunged again, Jake ducked, adrenaline igniting his reflexes. He could feel the rush of danger sharpening his senses. In that fraction of a second, he visualized the power of the images he could create. The Jaguars, fierce and unyielding, captured alongside his own unsteadied but resolute face. An emblem of hope and resistance against greed and destruction. "Look around you," Jake shouted, his voice piercing through the tension. "The earth is speaking, the Jaguars are speaking. They are teaching us that strength doesn't come from force, but from connection." He was astonished at his own impromptu speech. Where had this conviction come from? Each syllable sparked a fire within him, a reflection of his own awakening to self-worth and purpose. The poacher faltered, if only for a moment, uncertainty flaring in his eyes as he struggled to reconcile the impact of Jake's words. With rapid calculations shifting the dynamics in his mind, Jake pressed the advantage. He had a vision and a choice. He could create a future that resonated with understanding rather than fear. Realizing he needed to act decisively, Jake shot forward, positioning himself in front of the closest jaguar, asserting himself as both guardian and voice. He could feel the heat radiating from the poacher, the air thick with tension, but he refused to be intimidated. The jaguars mirrored his newfound resolve, their postures firm and unwavering. But beneath this surge of strength lurked a gnawing concern. What if his defiance ignite the poacher's desperation? What if words weren't enough to quell the violence? He contemplated the balance between aggression and advocacy. Could he outmaneuver a man unraveling before his very eyes? As Jake's resolve crystallized, he reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone to document the unfolding scene. It was time to channel the moment, to harness his adrenaline into a visual statement that would resonate beyond this fateful encounter. He captured an image of the jaguar beside him, emboldened against the poacher, his own face reflecting a blend of fear and determination. Just then, a piercing roar broke through the standoff. It was thunderous and primal, sending a rattle of energy through Jake. The jaguars responded with fierce growls, stepping protectively before him. And in that instant, Jake realized he was truly not alone. This confrontation evolved into a pivotal moment, a clarion call for bravery, for resilience, for profound change. The stakes weren't merely about survival, they were about redefining legacy, crafting a narrative of courage that transcended the boundaries of human conflict. Fueled by determination, Jake geared himself for the decisive action ahead. Extreme measures would be required to escape this volatile encounter without loss, yet he was ready to navigate the risks presented. Somehow, facing both the poacher and his own shadows now felt more than a challenge. It was a decisive moment where he could choose to become the voice for these bruised lands and the spirits inhabiting them. As the poacher readied another strike, Jake instinctively raised his camera again, poised to document the clash and frame it as a watershed moment in his life. The jaguars watched, silent witnesses to his evolution. But as he pressed the shutter, just a hair's breadth of doubt wandered back. Would his storytelling be enough? Would enough people heed this call to action? Would anything change? Those questions loomed in the air, heavy with consequence, as the poacher lunged once more, forcing Jake to confront not just the man's violent determination, but the clarity of his own emerging destiny. Would he become a catalyst for transformation, embodying the strength he professed? The world slowed as Jake's vision sharpened. The poacher's fury converged with his own burgeoning resolve, erupting into an internal cacophony that battered against the walls of his mind. Each breath he took felt monumental, laden with decision-making weight, and the gravity of the moment burgeoned within him. His heart beat in tandem with the jaguar's growls, a primal rhythm guiding him toward action amidst the encroaching chaos. Unbeknownst to the poacher, Jake had begun learning not just about saving jaguars, but about himself, how he was shaped by his choices and convictions. The startling realization jolted him out of his paralysis. He could pivot away from fear and toward agency. No longer merely a witness, he could sculpt this narrative into a powerful testament of courage. In the briefest moment of clarity, he recognized that now was not simply about confronting the immediate aggression. This was a crucible, a moment that imbued him with the potential to ignite change, a chance to redefine what it meant to be an advocate for the wild. To disengage from reactionary fear, anywhere between clenching his fists and surrendering, was the key to harnessing purpose. He realized the poacher's actions stemmed from desperation, a mindset that saw resources as finite and survival as a zero-sum game. Jake recognized the paradox of the poacher's plight. While he thrived off the land, he was simultaneously draining it to the brink of destruction. Their values were irreconcilable, yet within this moment lay an opportunity. How could Jake illustrate, through the lens of a camera, the truth of their interdependence? The Jaguars were not just protectors, they were guardians of an ecosystem that deserved respect. "Enough of this," Jake shouted, his voice shattering the tense stalemate. "Enough of fighting to extract and consume. It's time to fight to protect." His own inside voice inspired him. He was no longer simply speaking. He was performing an act of resistance. His determination rippled through him, empowering words that could draw attention to their plight. The Jaguar shifted, sensing the momentum in his speech. They stood stronger, their majestic forms an echo of Jake's own empowerment. He pivoted the camera to capture the embodiment of defiance that these creatures represented in this crucible for him. The moment was electric, a joint stand against an unstinting adversary who valued oppression over coexistence. "Can't you see it?" Jake's voice cut through the stillness like a blade. "The Jaguars are your kin, just as they are mine." As he spoke, clarity enveloped him. This wasn't merely about conservation, it was about collaboration. He envisioned a future where humans could learn from nature, where respect and reverence reigned over misunderstanding and violence. The poacher hesitated, his posture faltering as the weight of Jake's insistence threatened to penetrate the veil of his anger. Jake darted glances between the Jaguars, their fierce gazes steady on him, and the poacher, whose defiance had begun to waver. But Jake's heart pounded as he evaluated the risks involved. Would this newfound resolve find the vulnerable opening in the poacher's hardened stance, or would it be met with blind rage? Either way, Jake understood that a choice was imminent, not just for the poacher, but for him as well. He had awakened to a pivotal moment, one that could solidify his path and create ripples beyond this confrontation. Just as he was about to take a step forward, fully prepared to confront the poacher with raw truth and undeniable certainty, the glint in the poacher's eyes shifted dramatically. Instead of yielding, there was a darkness that flickered, a predatory hunger for dominance that sent a quick surge of panic rushing through Jake's veins. Could his words truly sway such a fractured spirit, or had he just incited more despair? With adrenaline coursing through his body, Jake steadied his breath as anticipation built. This was the moment, the tipping point where he would either affirm his newfound strength or succumb to fear. Just as his thoughts danced dizzily between the transformative potential of vulnerability and the relentless grip of hostility. As tension escalated, Jake's heart raced with uncertainty, realization dawning on him. The outcome rested not on the Jaguars, the poacher, or even the form of storytelling he had envisioned. It rested squarely on him, on his unwavering resolve to define not just what courage looked like, but what it could mean in shaping the very narrative of the wild itself. Would Jake summon the boldness to transform this moment from confrontation to breakthrough, or would he falter amidst the rising storm? The air crackled with the weight of his decision, and every eye, both human and animal, turned towards him, attenting his next move. The air held a tangible tension as silence enveloped the jungle, pregnant with mixed anticipation and fear. Jake's heart thundered, a metronome of adrenaline urging him to break the standoff. He could almost feel the breath of the Jaguars at his back, steady and resolute, as though they were encouraging him, pushing him to dig deeper and find the courage that he had unearthed moments before. The poacher's eyes narrowed, his grip on the rifle tightening, a declaration of intent lurking behind his steely gaze. Jake took a measured breath, summoning the voice that had surged through him like a current of electricity. "Look at them," he implored, gesturing dramatically toward the Jaguars, whose sleek bodies contrasted starkly against the vibrant greens of their habitat. "They're not just animals, they're a part of this land, part of something bigger than any one of us. Can't you see that their fight is a fight for survival, for connection? For a fleeting second, Jake thought he glimpsed a flicker of understanding in the poacher's eyes, but then it was gone, replaced by a tempest of rage. "They belong to me," the poacher barked, his voice raw, yet revealing an undercurrent of vulnerability. "I need them to survive, just like you need whatever it is you're after." Jake's mind raced. He understood the poacher's desperation, the gnawing uncertainty that prompted such rage. Still, Jake felt that the path to empathy lay through the raw truth that reverberated between them. "Desperation doesn't mean destruction," he shot back, surprised by the intuitive words that poured from him. "Living off the land shouldn't mean destroying it." With every word, Jake felt an unsteady resolve solidify within him. He was no longer just a photographer or observer. He was an agent of change, wielding his understanding like a weapon. The Jaguars shifted restlessly, as if believing in Jake's mission, embodying a silent support that encouraged him to lean into the conflict instead of retreating. "Every one of us has to choose how to live in harmony with nature," he pressed onward, channeling his burgeoning strength. "This land can be a sanctuary, a refuge that feeds us both. The Jaguars are not the enemy, but the key to balance. They help us, just as we must help them." Inkling traces of doubt flickered across the poacher's face. The grip on his rifle slackened, revealing a battle deeper than the one waged in the jungle around them. It was a struggle between survival and sustainability, a tug-of-war between immediate gratification and a viable future. Jake seized the moment, lowering his voice to a near whisper, resonating with an authentic appeal. "What if there is a way to provide for your family while keeping this ecosystem healthy? I can help you. We can work together." The poacher flinched, uncertainty wrestling with the pain of truth. An echo of realization glimmered within his eyes, but a flick of resentment masked it, revealing the scars of a life clawing for existence. He hesitated, caught in a storm of cognitive dissonance, a contender at the brink of transformation. Yet Jake understood the fragility of the moment, the precipice he stood upon. It all teetered on the brink. One wrong move, one stumbled word could send it tumbling into chaos. His stomach knotted with anxiety, but deep inside, the desire to forge a new narrative surged. He began to think not of mere words, but of framing them into a tangible project, a partnership founded on conversion rather than confrontation. Behind him, a jaguar let out a low growl, a timbre of warning that jolted him back to the peril at hand. The poacher's eyes darted to the creature, muscles tensing. The urgency to act before it spiraled back into violence spurred him. "Join me," Jake implored. "Let's find a way to protect this land that sustains us both." It was now or never. This was his pivotal moment, a reckoning that could redefine lives, his own included. The decision weighed heavily in the air, the Jaguars watching, their fate tethered to a fragile exchange between a man on the edge of desperation and a man daring to believe in collaboration. What would tip the balance? As Jake held his breath, the world around him began to shimmer with possibility. Would the poacher embrace the chance to uplift rather than destroy? Or would fear eclipse the dialogue? Jake stood resolute, ready to face whatever came next. A confrontation that could catalyze collective evolution or shatter the fragile hope he had grasped. In that electric moment, with hearts beating in synchrony, Jake realized something irrevocable. Balance depended on the choices made today, in this dusty clearing. His journey coiled at the intersection of courage and consequence. One final look into the poacher's eyes revealed the last barrier standing between them. Fear's insidious hold on humanity. What could he do to dismantle that fear? And would it galvanize into a connection strong enough to reshape destiny itself? Jake's appeal lingered in the air like the fading sound of a thunderclap, the poacher's eyes reflecting the turbulence swirling between them.
He could feel the jaguars behind him, their primal presence a tether to the moment, alive, watchful, and on the brink of instinctual retaliation. As seconds ticked by, Jake's focus honed in. The conflict was not merely with the poacher, it was within him as well. This was not just about saving the jaguars. It was about confronting the kind of man he aspired to be. "Please," he repeated, desperation creeping into his tone. "Let's think this through. Imagine a future where we're not locked in this cycle of fear. We can create sustainability here." With his heart racing, Jake's mind darted through potential solutions, each weaving a tapestry of possibilities before his eyes. He envisioned educational programs that would teach communities to coexist with the wildlife instead of exploiting it.
The poacher, now a metaphorical mirror reflecting aspects of Jake's own fears about his path, appeared torn. Would he continue to cling to the rifle, the symbol of fear and power, or reach out for collaboration? A sudden growl from the jaguar behind him broke the charged silence, jolting the poacher from his reverie. Eyes wide with a momentary flicker of appeasement, he glanced briefly at the magnificent creature. Fear flickered like a candle, but Jake seized this instant, capitalizing on curiosity over confrontation. These animals are not just resources for us, they're allies in our survival. The land needs them as much as we do. Words flowed more freely now, fueled by an inner well of conviction. Let's create an ecotourism model. People come from all over to see what we have here. It could be an income source for you that's far more sustainable than poaching. Together, we can ensure that knowledge about the jaguars and their role in the ecosystem is kept alive. You could become a steward, not just a consumer. Jake's words resonated with clarity. Each thought spiraled further into possibilities, a more vivid understanding of their interconnected fates shining through his resolve. The poacher's rigid stance faltered, hands trembling around the rifle. Jake saw them relax slightly. Was it apprehension or a glimmer of hope? "What if I fail?" the poacher finally muttered, his bravado waning. A breath left Jake's lungs, refreshing and empowered. He was no longer speaking just to convince. What if you succeed? This is a chance not only to protect the jaguars, but to redefine who you are to your family and your community. They will see you as a hero, a protector of the land. The poacher's expression fluctuated between uncertainty and intrigue, and for the first time, Jake felt the shift of potential energy towards a partnership. To plant a seed of transformation, a journey they would both undertake, was an exhilarating thought. In that precise moment, Jake felt a renewed awareness of his own capabilities. He was not just a witness in the jungle. He was a catalyst, summoned by the jaguars themselves, forged anew in the crucible of fear and possibility. But as the poacher hesitated, a deeper question gnawed at Jake. Was he prepared to step into this realm of shared responsibility? To fight for something beyond his camera lens? Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed through the jungle, shattering the fragile tranquility they tentatively built. It was a call for help, a human cry. Jake's heart sank. "What now?" the poacher asked, brows knitted, palpable tension rising anew. The jaguar shifted uneasily, and Jake felt the enormity of the situation spiral around them again, drawing both men into the gravity of urgency. He understood that whatever lay ahead would demand not only cooperation, but also profound courage. As he cast a glance towards the forest shadowing the sound, uncertainty filled him once again. Would the call for help redefine their fractious standoff? Would it usher in a new challenge that required the very partnership he sought? Before he could plunge deeper into the unfolding crisis, he steadied himself and took a purposeful step forward, his heart pounding, a blend of anticipation and trepidation beating in harmony. This was no longer solely about jaguars or poaching. It was about survival, compassion, and the raw, unrefined human instinct to protect. The moment arrived.
The time had come to face whatever demons awaited them in the underbrush. Would Jake's burgeoning understanding of resilience be enough to weather the storms ahead? The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting elongated shadows that danced across the dense underbrush as Jake stood on the precipice of a decisive moment. The shrill call for help still reverberated through the trees, an urgent reminder that the jungle is a place of unrelenting survival. He could feel the jaguars at his back, fierce and vigilant, their presence a testament to the bond that transcended species, a connection rooted in protection and resilience. The poacher's hardened exterior began to crack under the weight of the unfolding crisis. Jake saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. "We need to go, now," the poacher muttered, muscles tense as he instinctively positioned himself closer to the threat of the incoming noise. "No," Jake replied, his voice firm yet steady. "We need to figure this out together. That call could mean someone's life is at stake. If we stand apart, we risk losing everything, including each other." This was the moment Jake had prepared for, the juncture between fear and bravery where transformation could take root. He felt a surge of purpose igniting his resolve, bolstered by the potent energy of the jaguars. He had spent years driving a truck, but now he was firmly in the driver's seat of his own narrative. He could not retreat. The time had come to elevate his fight for both his children and the jaguars. The poacher hesitated, internal conflict playing out across his features. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "I want us to protect what's precious," Jake breathed, his heart racing with the urgency of the moment. "These jaguars are part of this land, just like the people who inhabit it. We fight together for our survival." With a pregnant pause hanging in the air, Jake sensed the tension shift around them. The poacher's grip on the rifle slackened just a fraction, a hint of doubt seeping into his resolve. Jake capitalized on the moment, his voice now imbued with sincere conviction. "We can rewrite our stories. You can be seen as a protector, not a predator. Empowerment, not consumption. But it's going to take courage from both of us." Jake took a resolute step forward, causing the poacher to blink, apprehension mixing with curiosity. It was a crack in the man's armor, an opportunity for a dialogue that had been years in the making, between humanity and nature, between hope and despair. "I'll film this," Jake insisted, raising his camera once more, ready to document not just the jaguars, but their joint effort. "This could redefine how we interact with our environment. Together, we can ignite a movement that speaks to the hearts of everyone in Pinevale and beyond." The poacher's expression wavered as Jake's words hung in the balance of possibility. "But what if it fails?" "That's better than never trying," Jake countered. "What's lost in silence is greater than any risk taken in the light." A rustle in the underbrush drew Jake's attention back to the source of that urgent cry. "Let's go," he urged, glancing back at the jaguars, which were poised, instinctively protective, a fierce support for their shared mission. They were a living reminder of the stakes at play, their survival intricately tied to the poacher's choices, Jake's ambitions, and his children's future. With a newfound determination cemented in camaraderie, Jake and the poacher moved toward the sound, the jaguars flanking their sides as guardians of truth. Jake's heart thudded in anticipation, the air electric with each footfall, every moment a culmination of their choices. As they pushed through the foliage, a clearing emerged, a sight that churned Jake's stomach. A group of hunters lay low under the cover of the trees, their eyes fixed on the jaguars. The poacher's instincts kicked in, tension rising again in his posture, ready to defend or attack. "Wait," Jake blurted, but desperation surged forth as he realized the danger had come full circle. "They're endangering this land, and they don't care about families here." His voice broke through the chaotic din of uncertainty, igniting their shared responsibility to protect the land. "Let's show them. You have the power to stand with me, not against me." Together, they raised their cameras, streaming their voices, two distinct yet unified forces confronting the encroaching dangers of greed and exploitation. Their combined purpose became blurred yet beautiful, an articulation of struggle and awakening that would resonate through the valley. In that moment, they were not just two men caught in confrontation, but a clarion call against injustice. Jake felt the bond solidify between them, an unspoken understanding of what it meant to protect without possessing. As he pressed record, fear gave way to a potent, unyielding courage, his journey transmuting into something revolutionary. And when the first shot rang out, a warning against the Jaguars, a primal instinct surged through him, igniting the fierce warrior within. This was no longer just about saving Jaguars. It was about redefining lives. Jake stepped forward, shoving the poacher out of the way, placing his own body in harm's path. "No!" he shouted, the sound ringing with defiance. It was a moment that transcended fear. The Jaguars roared to life beside him, a powerful testament to the urgency that tethered them all, human and animal alike, to this fragile land. They stood as a united front, invigorated by the very life they fought to protect. When dawn finally broke across the horizon, illuminating the chaos, Jake felt an emotion that was richer and deeper than he ever hoped for. He had not only confronted the poacher, but had discovered a part of himself entirely. As the cries of gratitude from protected souls filled the air, there was a tangible sense of fulfillment swelling in his chest. Jake had transformed, not simply as a man, but as a protector, a visionary willing to reclaim not just the stories of the Jaguars, but tell his own as well. In the embrace of fierce love and fierce protection, he finally understood. The fight for family encompasses the fight for all that is precious. It was a climactic closer. Now was the time for everyone to take their stand. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.